Hello, welcome back to Black Book Stacks. I'm your host, Toshonda Sanders, and happy Black History Month. Here we are. This is going to be a video that focuses on some of my favorite Black History Month books. I might be trying to do too much, but y'all let me know in the comments. I'm going to do a quick unhaul so that you see some of the books that I'm either going to donate or recycle in the case of galleys, and my short to be read list for the rest of February. There weren't that many releases for February that I was expecting this year for some reason, at least not ones that I got in time to do this video. So I figured since we're almost at the middle of February, it's probably good to just go ahead and do this video for those of you who have been waiting. All right, let me see. Let us start with the Unhaul. I loved this A Song for You by Robin Crawford. I learned that Whitney Houston dated Eddie Murphy, which I did not know. I thought there were some really great passages, and obviously Robin Crawford's vulnerability is admirable. I'm glad that Robin got her happy ending. So, but I don't necessarily know if I need to hold on to this one, so I'm going to donate that to the library. I have been trying to read this book, which I think is middle grade, for a little while now. More to the Story by Hannah Khan. I am not going to get to it, I don't think. So, I'm going to figure out what to do with it. Probably going to recycle it. Same with Shatter the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. Looks really cool. I love the cover, but I don't think I'm going to get into it. It's a queer epic fantasy, apparently, and it's supposed to be pretty awesome. I was looking forward to eventually trying it, but my brain says no. I guess it came out in July 2019. It's not gonna happen. Okay, I did, however, in July of 2019, really enjoy For Black Girls Like Me by Mariama Lockington. Mariama has another book coming out too soon. It's beautiful. It's about this 11-year-old girl named Makeda who has a mentally ill parent and how she kind of deals with that and all kinds of upheaval and stuff like that. I really saw aspects of my story here. I love the cover. Again, it's just like so beautiful and unique. But I don't need to hold on to this galley as much as I love just holding on to it. So I definitely recommend it if you haven't read it, even if you feel like, okay, well, this is not for me, it's for kids. You can still get a lot from it. I think it's like the poetry is really amazing and it's really well written and all those things. And since we're talking about 2019, With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, really great book. I reviewed it for the New York Times, and it was, I described it as like Water for Chocolate meets something else. It's kind of like an update of like Water for Chocolate, and if you don't know what that's about, it includes a lot of cooking and recipes, but what I love the most about Imani, who's the main character here, is that she's a single mother. She's like a teenage mom who continues to stay in school and like has this really supportive family. It's not the typical like down on your luck, really dysfunctional teenage pregnancy story. And of course it's written with Elizabeth Acevedo's beautiful flair and talent for language, so I really enjoyed it. I can link the review to the New York Times piece below so you can see it, see what more I had to say about it. So I raved about it because it was so beautiful. And finally, I think I'm going to take this Barnes & Noble exclusive edition sticker off, but maybe I don't need to. Anyway, I'm gonna donate this to the library. Frankly in Love. I loved it. It was so cool. Lots of really cool characters, really thoughtful. I can't say enough cool things about it. I mean, I actually felt like it was sort of slow at the beginning, but then it picked up. and like it really picked up like in the last third, maybe last 100 pages. It's about like, what we got here? Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm in the alternate section. So it's a little bit, it's close to 400 pages. So it's a quick read though. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Really entertaining. I learned a lot. So that was cool. I don't know why the light is changing in my neighborhood right now, but that's annoying. Anyway, so what I would like to read this month that I haven't yet is Dear Martin by Nick Stone. So this is I believe this is a young adult book, and it came out I think in 2017, in October of 2017. But I also have Odd One Out, which is I think her next book, and then after this one, and then there's Jackpot, which is recently out, and then I think Nick Stone has some other books coming out too. But I've been meaning to read it. This is the Galley, obviously, so I somehow managed to get this I think when I went to Book Expo, and I started it, but I wasn't able to finish. I got distracted, so I'm going to make it my business to circle back. Speaking of circling back, my friend Jamia wrote this book, Young, Gifted, and Black. Meet 52 Black heroes from past and present. I don't know if this is a signed edition. No, I didn't get it signed, but she was at the Brooklyn Book Festival not that long ago, and so that's where I finally picked up my copy. And even though I didn't get to see her, I've been wanting to read it, and this is the perfect time to read it. Okay. Speaking of books that I have been meaning to catch up on that I got a long time ago that I haven't had a chance to read, but all y'all are holding me accountable, so that's why I'm doing this. Brother by David Charyandi. Might be saying that wrong. Sorry, boo. So this is kind of a slim book. It's about a housing complex in Toronto. It's, the description is a startling new literary talent explores masculinity, race, and sexuality against the backdrop of violence during the summer of 1991. So I've heard really good things about this author. I have a follow-up book from him as well, from Bloomsbury. So I've been meaning to read those, and I'm going to. So I don't have any business buying more books because I literally don't have space for all of them, which is why I need to do an Unhaul. But I did pick up The Stars and the Blackness Between Them because I love this amazing cover. It's just so beautiful and rich. And so I'm really looking forward to reading this one as well. And then finally, last but not least, I am so looking forward to A Phoenix First Must Burn. A Phoenix First Must Burn. And it's edited by a friend, Patrice Caldwell. And the subtitle is 16 Stories of Black Girl Magic. 16 Stories of Black Girl Magic, Resistance, and Hope. So look at this stunning cover. Someone who grew up with kind of not as much, I think, attention focused on intentional diversity and representation. It's just such a joy as a reader and as a Black girl reader to actually see some vibrance and beauty, attributed to our stories as opposed to just kind of static, dull images. All right, now let's get to the good part. So people often ask me what books they should read, and I feel like Black History Month going into Women's History Month, going into Poetry Month, which I usually bring some emphasis on Black poetry, and then I guess we get a reprieve in May, and then in June there's Black Music Month. So these theme months are great because it feels like there's sort of this need for content that's themed around those specific things. But when people ask me about different books they can read, well, it all depends on what you're most interested in or what you're looking to learn more about, or so there are a lot of different factors that go into book recommendations. I think they're pretty personal. But that said, I wanted to talk about some of my favorites, and I may do some others because obviously I have a lot of favorites as someone who is pretty avid book reader. But one of the first books that I read when I was younger was To Be Young, Gifted, and Black by Lorraine Hansberry. And as a companion to this book, if you've not read it, obviously Lorraine Hansberry, if you don't know, is the author of A Raisin in a Sun, which is this award-winning play that was sort of like one of the first of its kind. And Imani Perry, who's an amazing and very prolific scholar, wrote a beautiful biography of Lorraine Hansberry called Looking for Lorraine. So I would also read that in addition. But this is just a really kind of slim autobiography of Lorraine Hansberry, kind of focused on the play itself. And it gives you a little bit of her flair, of her queerness, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. I found it really inspirational, actually, because I had not seen or really read about a more contemporary Black woman who was being a pioneer in terms of writing and creativity when I was younger. And I don't remember, I feel like maybe we heard a little bit about Phillis Wheatley, for instance, right, who was like recognized as the first Black poet, enslaved poet who, sort of like created the poetic canon in the US. But there's like no, at the time when I was in school, there wasn't really a big like in between. Like it was either Phillis Wheatley and like Harriet Tubman, kind of, maybe a little Sojourner Truth. And then we went right from there to like Terry McMillan, right? Which is like no shade on Terry McMillan. I loved all of her books, but that's kind of a big leap. Because what it left out was things like the Combahee River Collective Statement and Audre Lorde and Barbara Smith and Barbara Ransby. So How We Get Free, Black Feminism and the Combahee River Collective really fills in those gaps. It has interviews with Alicia Garza from Black Lives Matter, and also Barbara Ransby, and also Barbara Smith, who was one of the co-founders of Combahee River Collective. And the Combahee River Collective is named after the river in South Carolina where Harriet Tubman, working with the U.S. government, helped the Union Army free slaves in a raid, and I forget exactly how many slaves there were that she helped free, but that was like an instance of a part of Black history that's like never really written about. But anyway, the Combahee River Collective really animated the language that we talk about when we talk about intersectionality. So when they're talking about interlocking oppressions that impact Black women, essentially they were saying how you get free is you lift all of the oppressions that impact all Black women, because everything that comes to bear in our lives comes to bear in the lives of other people. So it's really helpful to read this book. I taught this book when I was teaching at the New School, and I found it's incredibly valuable in terms of a foundation for not just talking about Black feminism and Black history and a part of Black history that is really sort of obscured in most curricula, but also talking about kind of how we get to the language that we have now around Black feminism, for example. Speaking of that, Audre Lorde, Sister Outsider, there is a new edition of this coming that I'm going to read about, but and maybe probably also review. But this is a seminal text of Black feminist thought, also I think of groundwork, sort of a seminal work of thinking about intersectional feminism and what that could look like. A lot of these speeches, essays were delivered in the 1970s. There's a really great Q&A with Adrienne Rich and Audre Lorde. Uses of the erotic as power is an incredible essay to talk about not just When we think of the erotic, we generally think of sexuality, and but we think of it in like kind of a pornographic way, so like in an exploitative way. But she's really talking about the source of our sensuality as a way of us coming to know ourselves and therefore knowing other people. There's poetry is not a luxury. One of my favorite quotes in this collection is, "Our white fathers taught us, I think, therefore I am. The black mother within us says, I feel, therefore I can be free." It's just deeply, deeply beautiful. So if you can get your hands on it, I think it would be really amazing, you know, to see kind of just how visionary she was in terms of how she thought about the world. Speaking of visionaries, Angela Davis, Women, Race, and Class, one of my favorites. This is another book that I've had for a really long time. It was one of my first introductions to hearing about not just black women in slavery, but also, for instance, racism in the women's suffrage movement. Because now we know that it's the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which allowed white women to vote. Yeah, anyway, it was helpful for me to read Angela Davis when I was younger, even though I didn't quite understand her. At the Dark End of the Street really talks about the ways that black women protected themselves against sexual violence during the civil rights movement, and it includes the names of not just Rosa Parks, but also Claudette Colvin, who was the black girl teenager, essentially, who could have been chosen by the civil rights movement to be the face of kind of resistance before Rosa Parks, but Rosa Parks was considered kind of a better, more respectable person to do that, to be that face. And so, I only learned about that through Danielle McGuire. Sojourner Truth, A Life, a Symbol is an incredible book. This is one of my favorite biographies that I've read. It was by Nell Irvin Painter, who also recently wrote Old in Art School. And there's a great quote in this book about the fact that Sojourner Truth often didn't get paid when she did speaking engagements. And so she sold these daguerreotypes of herself. And so her saying was, I sell the shadow to support the substance. And she was basically saying that, like, yeah, they were shadow imprints basically of her image and her likeness, and she needed to sell them actually in order to support the substance of the things that she was talking about, even though people acknowledged widely that she was very brilliant. Sisters of the Yam. So Bell Hooks has, I mean, I don't always agree with all the things that Bell Hooks says, and I'll just leave it at that. At the same time, Bell Hooks is another prolific black woman that I think is just not given her due. And when I read Sisters of the Yam, I read it, I think, probably around the time that I read the Black Women's Health book by my mentor, edited by my mentor, Evelyn C. White. And it was important for me to see that there were many other black women, black people who were dealing with addiction or dealing with healing dark things, or, you know, understanding that we had selves and lives that were separate from whatever was said about us in the broader culture. So I love Sisters of the Yam. I love a lot of what Bell Hooks has written. She's also written a book called Remembered Rapture, and it's about black women writing, and that was a seminal text for me as a writer, and as a lover of books, to have someone of her stature really address writing from a black woman's point of view. So those are a few that I would begin with, and I think this video is getting kind of long, so I will be back with additional recommendations probably later in February and going into March. Until next time, please let me know what you're reading, and thank you for your shares and your likes and your subscriptions. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care.